Chapter 1, The Coming Darkness. It was the usual beautiful early morning in the kingdom of Valel, and daily life had already begun. Ashta, a humble farmer, and his two sons Animra and Hiraman were busy toiling in the fields preparing the land for the sowing of the crops, as his wife Marlena and their two beautiful daughters Katrisa and Shiza were busy working around the house. "Breakfast is ready, my princes, tell your father then come and eat," cried Marlena cheerfully, relieved by their mother's proclamation. Having been working before dawn, the two brothers halted, turning their gaze unto the hill where their father earnestly labored with the rays of the sun dancing round about him as if they were good friends of old. "I'll wait here," conveyed Animra as Hiraman began his journey jogging up the hill towards him. "Father, mother has called us to breakfast," he announced, trying to recapture his fleeting breath. Ashta, with a look of concern, quickly concealed by the loving smile of a proud father, then cordially replying, "You and your brother have been working hard all morning," glimpsing over at Animra, "Go and eat. Tell your mother that I'll be joining you shortly." Hiraman, having glimpsed the guise of anxiety on his father's face, wondered at what it could be, but knowing his father for being mysterious by nature, decided not to press the issue, quickly departing from his presence back towards Animra, who waited patiently. "Is father not coming to breakfast?" he inquired, an expression of frustration plastered across his handsome countenance, staring at his father as he labored restlessly upon the hill. Hiraman abruptly stopping at his side, turning his gaze towards him, stricken of all emotion. "Come on, father has one of those looks again. You know the type, so let's just go to breakfast," he said. "He'll be joining us shortly," immediately departing on their journey towards the cottage. Ashta, sensing terrible pain and suffering in the atmosphere, discerning that its origin came from the north, in the direction of their neighboring kingdom of Grendel, deciding to investigate the matter, abruptly dropping his hoe as he stepped off towards the Akanese forest. Ashta, employ his unseen abilities, moved at unearthly speed, swiftly arriving at the borders of Grendel, hearing a great commotion. Choosing to assimilate the situation, he cautiously approached. Peering through the brushes, shocked and distraught at the sight of the destruction and death of the people, their bodies, both young and old, torn limb from limb, with their entrails splashed and scattered all over as if done in the likeness of art, as strong smells of burning flesh, stifled by stomach-churning odors, filled the atmosphere as the place swarmed with various forms of grotesque demonic creatures going about slaughtering all whom they found. The atmosphere radiating with terror as the Greedilium warriors fought bravely, struggling against their impending doom, did their utmost to withstand the demonic horde, granting many of their people the privilege of escape as they tore into the surrounding forest as their cities burned. Ashta, enraged by all that he witnessed, hearing the blood of the people crying out from the earth for justice, swiftly deciding to intervene with a supernatural dash towards an enemy, when he was suddenly engulfed by a blindingly bright light. Abruptly finding himself traveling at incalculable speeds through a dimensional doorway before coming to an abrupt stop as his vision began to slowly returning. Stand in the presence of his father, seated high and glorified upon his throne, as he displeasingly gazed down upon him with the lowly farmer awestruck by his power, perceiving himself but an insect before an immovable force. Hira, his father, not wanting him to interfere, immediately having acquired him. "Father, why have you prevented me from saving the people and ridding the world of this evil?" he exclaimed, unable to look upon his father's resplendence, being only allowed to glimpse at his feet. Ashta, seemingly having forgotten his due diligence as he stood before the highest, unaware of his surroundings as all the elders of the highest heaven stood by, concealed by the immense glory of his father, when a sudden great and terrible sound erupted from his throne across the heavenly realm, shaking the very foundations, causing all to fear and bow down in worship of the highest. "My son, it is not given for you to intervene in such small matters so publicly, for the time has not yet come that a god such as you should be made known unto many." Ashta, having fell upon his face, pitifully glimpsing up at his father's feet. "Father, will you allow Midrealm to be consumed by this evil? Shall this prince of darkness subdue it?" he inquired in humility, his heart overcome with despair. "Your children, whom you having deprived of their truth, shall prove themselves worthy of their inheritance by defeating this threat, or the people of Estesh shall perish," proclaimed the great king, shaking the structure around him. Ashta, realizing his great error, greatly concerned for the well-being of his family and people, strenuously fighting his way towards his father's feet, collapsing before him in lamentation, "Father, forgive my transgressions, especially for my absence and neglect of duties," he comfortlessly beseeched, struggling to reach out to his father with a woeful murmur. "I beseech you, Father, please permit me to return home, even to divulge the truth to those it was hid." Hiram, moved by the love he held for his son, having long forgiven him, "Arise, son of my strength, I have heard you, and what you have asked is given," sternly gesturing for him to rise. Ashta's great strength returning with the gratefulness for Hira's mercy, praised and worshipped him, being simultaneously consumed by light on the very verge of being transported home when he heard a familiar and soothing voice reach out to him. "It was good seeing you amongst us, little brother, farewell," when he caught a glimpse of his eldest brother's hair before his image faded from sight as he was abruptly blasted back home into the skies of Midrealm. Meanwhile, back home, his family pondered desperately where he could be, having been absent for more than half the day, as they eagerly awaited his return in the yard, when they were stunned by a sudden flare of ethereal light appearing above them, timely diminishing to reveal the now glorified Ashta, who calmly descended towards them, resting his feet upon the blades of grass. "Be not afraid, for it is I," he pronounced with elegance. "I have returned to make amends for having withholding from you the choice. Having condemned you to a mortal existence," speechlessly gazing at his divinity, remaining frozen in awe as the god continued, "I am a god of the highest, and in my neglect of duty have denied you, my children, your birthright, that now in this time of great evil, this crushing responsibility has been thrusted upon your shoulders unprepared." Countless thoughts rushing through their befuddled minds as they marveled at his beauty, Anamra, with a spark of destiny in his eyes, being the first amongst them to find the courage to speak. "Father, truly this overwhelming, we, the children of a god, yet we did not see the evidence of this great mystery within us," he boldly conveyed, clearly overcome with enthusiasm as the others mutely observed. Marlena, lost in a state of shock, observing all that took place, desperately attempting to make sense of it all, peering into her memories, recalling the accounts of her husband's alien behavior as his radiance dazzled her mortal eyes. Ashta, remembering that his time was short, seeing the semblance of betrayal on Marlena's countenance, looked upon them with increasingly great concern. "Marlena, my everlasting love, I will reveal all things to you shortly, but there is no time," he petitioned. "Come to me, my children," his arms outstretched as the four of them humbly stepped forward. The god, with a wave of his hand, removing the impediment within them, instantly awakening the light which lay dormant within each of their souls, causing their auras to become visible as the celestial energies surged through their bodies, causing them to begin to glow beautifully, each of them having a unique color but all bearing a golden tinge in their auras. Anamra, having longed to be more than just a simple farmer, feeling the new life surging within his being, with his heart overcame with gladness, now freed from the shackles of mortality, seeing this as his opportunity to become the master of his own destiny. Anamra's mind, clouded by the desires of his heart, elevating himself above the others with the sheer power of his will, levitating a few feet off the ground in an attempt to transform himself in likeness of his father. Anamra's aura now radiating intense heat, energies, and force into his surroundings, so much so that his siblings feared when Hiram saw their mother in anguish, attempting to escape the intensifying inferno emanating from his brother. "Anamra, stop before you destroy us all," he shouted, shielding his mother from the burning winds that were rapidly spiraling out of control. Though submerged within his madness, he heard the whisper of his brother's words, opening his eyes, his heart broken as he caught glimpse of his cowering mother from behind his brother as a teardrop trickled down her blistered cheek. The new god instantly subduing the force within him, returning to the ground with his best effort to conceal his brightly burning aura, which had now become mortally unbearable. The young god rushing to his mother's side, "Mother, please forgive me." "Are you all right?" he regrettably asks. Marlena, with a look of understanding, placing her hand on his shoulder when Hiram bluntly interrupted the moment, pushing his brother aside, "You could have vaporized her, we know nothing of the capabilities of our new abilities." He barks as Anamra swiftly stands to feet, clearly agitated. "But you didn't even think about that, did you?" wrathfully, clenching his fists as if ready to fight with his elder brother, swiftly barking his reply, "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to. I just saw father's power and wanted to test my own," also clenching his fists as the two glare at one another with harmful intent. Ashta, witnessing the tension between his sons, then quickly intervening, "Calm down, both of you. Your mother was never in any mortal danger," he asserted, placing himself between the two before comforting his beloved. Patrick saw and Shiza then running and kneeling beside them. "Father, I have longed for such a gift, to shape my own destiny, that those who dwell in the heavens shall gaze down in awe at my accomplishments," proclaimed Animra, his heart filled with pride and zeal. Asta gracing Marlena with a kiss on the forehead, initiating her supernatural recovery as he stood to approach him. "Animra, my son, it is good that you have accepted this path with such zeal, but I sense danger. Though your intentions may be for good, watch the steps of your feet that you do not slip into error," averred Ashta, placing his hands as a gesture of peace upon his shoulders when he was struck by a vision, a glimpse of Animra's glorious but dark future. He would indeed exceed in greatness, accomplishing much good, but his throne would be clouded in great darkness, symbolizing horrendous evil. Ashta stepping away in confusion and disappointment, glancing back at Marlena, who now stood up from the ground. "I've been married to a god this whole time. The tales of old are true after all," she mumbled in wonderment as her Patrick knelt beside her comforting Shiza. The two sisters themselves speechless as they gaze around at their family when Hiraman came swiftly bowing before their father. "Father, what shall we do with the great power you have given us?" he queried, Ashta proud of the Medi he had become, stroking his beautiful curls. "By the will of Hira you have all been given charge over your destinies. Having all that you shall ever need by your will," imparting a measure of strength onto Hiraman. "The Most High has charged you with the restoration of the peace in Midrealm by defeating the demon prince Hikuth. Failure to do this will result in the destruction of all the kingdoms of Estesh," he explained, his voice deeply saddened by the thought of their potential failure. Ashta then turning his gaze towards Marlena and Shiza, his youngest, having done what he had promised, knowing that his time with them had now ran out. Perceiving their chief and company fiercely riding towards them in the far distance, turning his visage towards the brothers, "Suk Helbron will arrive here shortly to inform you of the current crisis, no doubt seeking help. When the time is right, tell the people to call upon my name and I will be faithful in answering, but as for now I must take my leave with your mother and younger sister," he revealed. After hearing this, the three waxed bitter with sadness. Patrick saw in tears moving to embrace them. "Take care, be a good girl," she whispered, kissing Shiza on either cheek prior to Animra and Hiraman strolling over to say their disheartening goodbyes. "Father, take good care of these two for me till we meet again," asserted Animra, concealing his heartbreak, barely able to look his mother in the eye out of shame when she without warning strongly embraced him. "We'll be fine, take care of you brother and sister," she instructs him, caressing his face and kissing his forehead before gazing into his igneous eyes. "It's okay," she lovingly whispered, sensing the lingering lump of guilt within his manly bosom. Hiraman speechless and in tears, embracing his family, his mother affectionately placing her hands on his cheeks. "It's okay my love, we'll be alright, just be strong for one another. Always act in love and unity. Please," she urged in tears as Hiraman broken-heartedly nodded, slowly backing away. Patrick saw an Animra having taken Shiza, playfully conversing with her when the bright and beautiful little divine spotted Hiraman strolling towards them broken-hearted, at which point she immediately departed their company, leaping into his arms. Her arms wrapped around his neck as she lovingly laid her head upon his shoulder. "I'll come back to visit you the first chance I get," she cries, clutching unto him as he held her in his clutches. Wiping the tears from her eyes, "I'm looking forward to that promise and know you're in good care, just don't give them too much trouble up there," he said warmly, placing her gently back onto the ground, nodding her little head before giving him a last quick hug. "My time here is up and we must be on our way," asserted Ashta as the little goddess takes in the moment with her siblings. "Come Shiza, we must get going with your father," conveyed Marlena as she gestures for her to come over when she abruptly ran to their sides as her eyes overflowed with tears. The three waving goodbye at the remaining with Marlena miming a last, "I love you," to the trio before vanishing in a glint of light when they heard the sonorous voice of their father reminding them to look within. The trio now left standing in the yard, in wonderment at what fate awaits them with their lives now thrusted into a state of potentially limitless possibilities. Each of them finally snapping out of the trance-like state, looking around one another before strolling towards the cottage. This morning we awoke mere Medi, and now we are the children of the mythical gods about to go to war against a demon prince, yammers Hieromen. What is happening to Midrealm? Pausing for a moment as he observed his brother and sister before continuing his rant. Who is this Prince Hikuth anyway, and why would anyone want to destroy our home? Animra patiently reflecting on his words. Whoever he is, he's bad news if our father, a god, is concerned about him. Hieromen then slumping into one of the armchairs, taking solitude within himself. This day has brought forth the most unexpected happenings, muttered Katrisa, walking around the living room in disbelief. How is it even possible that one's life could transform in such an inconceivable manner? Hieromen overhearing her from the mountain of solitude within his mind, then replying with sarcasm, maybe we are hallucinating all these things, sister, reclining in his armchair, distantly glimpsing around at the others. Animra, finding their outlook on the situation rather amusing, laughed, you both lack vision. We are numbered amongst the gods, and yet the both of you speak as if it is a curse that has been yoked upon us, he loftily proclaimed as he stood from his seat, parading around the room in admiration of his new abilities, making a display as his hands began to glow red with heat. Just relax and smell the flowers, dropping himself in the sofa. Katrisa's mind now a little more enlightened, grasping at the possibilities as her countenance began to dimly glowing with Hieromen seated in deep contemplation. A few minutes later, as each of them sat quietly to themselves with the celestial energies briskly improving their senses, they heard the hooves of many horses galloping towards them. Remembering what their father had told them, they immediately hurried out into the front yard, beholding Sook Helbron alongside Sook Geraldo and a small troop of warriors trailing behind as they emerged from around the bend. Sook Helbron arriving before them, he immediately dismounted his horse and approached the trio with a look of confusion mingled with urgency. Great peril is upon us. Monstrous beasts have come from the north and have destroyed Grendel, killing most of its inhabitants, with very few of them miraculously managing reach us, he conveyed, examining the three before passing through their midst towards the cottage. Where are your mother and father? He sternly queried, turning back towards them. The siblings, still taken aback by the terrible news, mumbling one to another when Katrisa articulately replied, Mother and father are gone, and has taken our kid sister with him. We're the only ones here. Sook Helbron, deeply troubled by the news of Ashta's departure in such a dangerous time, being overly concerned for his and his family's safety, wondered at where they could have gone. Ashta has been my good friend from my youth and has always been a good Medi. I hope the spirits guide him safely to his destination, he expressed, his countenance emanating his sadness. Glancing around at his surroundings before returning his watchful gaze upon them, gather your things, we're heading back to Kentush where we are creating a defensive perimeter, he asserted, the three of them then hurrying back into the cottage, gathering what they deemed necessary before mounting their horses and commencing their journey with Sook Helbron and the others back to the capital. On arriving at the capital, the mournful atmosphere fell heavy upon their hearts as they bared witness to the agony of the afflicted. Katrisa and Hieromen, moved with compassion, deciding to exercise their divine gifts, immediately dismounted their horse in an attempt to best mitigate the afflictions of the people. Katrisa, spotting a mangled Meddi child and her anguishing mother left for dead in the streets, departed from her brother. Observing the child as she rocked in pain with her right arm dislocated and covered in lacerations and her mother battered and bruised, having deep wounds all over. The young goddess, taking a deep breath, scanned the mother's body for further injuries when she glimpsed an X-ray imagery of her two broken ribs, at which she touched at in disbelief, causing the woman to flinch in pain. Quickly withdrawing her hand, I'm going to make it better, she averred, staring upon their miserable visage, with the Mehdi giving her a faint nod towards the child. As she rested at her side, Katrisa stretching forth her arms, placing her hands over the child's arm. Reflecting upon the words of her father when she released a powerful surge of life-giving energy throughout the child's body, as Animra, Sook Helbron, and all the others who saw marveled as her flesh returned and her arm slipped back into place. The child's mother, amazed by the miracle she had witnessed, pleaded with all she could to be healed when the goddess graced her with a pitiful smile, gesturing for her to relax as she rested her hand upon her shoulder, swiftly numbing her pain as her rented flesh and broken ribs came back together. Patrick saw's abilities making right all that was wrong within her mortal body. The mother and daughter, completely restored, being grateful, fell upon their faces before her in gratitude as the mother wholeheartedly praised her. Praise to the spirits, for they yet live and have not forgotten us. The works of their hands. All those witnessing marveled in godly fear at what she had done, hearkening unto the words of the Mahdi, shouting, "The gods have not forgotten us, praise and glory to the highest, the foundation of all things." This being the first of the miracles, Patrick saw and Hieromen continued throughout the night, healing all regardless of the severity of their afflictions, removing and restoring even scares and formerly severed limbs. Meanwhile, in Suk-Helbron's manor, in the stead of his father, Animra reasoned amongst the Suks and elders that had arrived as all the leaders of the 12 kingdoms rallied to Valel under the instructions of Suk-Helbron, bringing with them their most capable warriors. "A time of evil has come upon us. Dreadful beasts have descended from the north upon my people, from the land of Ekin, and have slaughtered them," announced Suk-Geraldo, rubbing his forehead in grievance. "I fear the worst for all of us if they're not vanquished," downheartedly gazing around when Suk-Helbron took a stand beside him, placing a comforting hand on his shoulder as he took a seat. "And that is why we are all here. Being that Valel rests in the heart of our land and is most likely their next target," he affirmed, marching around flamboyantly in his thick suite of armor, "the best defensive counteraction would be here." The uproar and the many mentions of the incredible miracles performed by Hieromen and Patrick saw throughout the night had the Suks and elders dumbfounded at their abilities as they deeply considered all the things that had recently came to pass. Animra, prompted by his father's influence, deciding to address the matter. "I know you have questions. Believe me, so do I, but what I know, that will I reveal to you," averred the new god, walking in their midst as he continued. "My father, Ashta, who dwelt among you from his youth these many years in Valel, has revealed himself to be a god of the highest heaven. Having fallen in love with our mother Marlena, a mortal Mehdi whom you've all known since birth, conceived resulting in me and my kin, the evidence to all that I've said being the miracles performed by my brother and sister, of which many of you witnessed." Silence swept over the room as Animra's revelation left them all astounded, for many of them had known Ashta from his youth through his close friendship with Suk-Helbron, being humble and just in character, possessing wisdom well beyond his years. Ashta, knowing the tribes, knew little to nothing of the gods and were surprised that one even deemed them worthy to live amongst them, walked betwixt them, observantly and inconceivable by their natural eyes as they reasoned one to another pertaining to the knowledge which was bestowed upon them. Perceiving the great confusion in the midst of their council, communed with Animra's spirit, a deeper knowledge, so that he could reveal to them that which was forgotten. Thousands of years ago, when the Median race was new and the spirits freely intermingled with mortals, Medi being the last race created by the everlasting Father, lacking in many of the advantages given to their predecessors, were greatly loved and nurtured by the gods, so much so that they knew no form of hardship or pain. Being protected by the gods, Medi grew boastful and evil, and so they decided to wage war upon all that was under the heavens, to subdue all under their feet. Believing themselves to be the children of the gods, became puffed up with pride by the great love and protection granted to them, and so they marched across the realms with the use of powerful and ancient magic, conquering and enslaving all. Hira, the everlasting father of the gods, seeing that their hearts had become desperately wicked as their desires outgrew their love and admiration for the gods, so much so that if it were possible they would challenge the gods themselves, commanded his children to withdraw themselves from Medi, that they should be made humble in having to labor even for all their basic needs, which was freely granted to them. Medi, now made like unto the rest of creation, given over to their natural strength and weaknesses, were oblivious of their detrimental fall from grace. Blinded by their lust for power, they went on to wage countless wars, but now without the blessings of the gods, the once immovable race suffered numerous and humiliating defeats, having all manner of evil inflicted upon them, as all the races they had slaughtered and enslaved, formed resistances, joining forces in a genocidal campaign to eradicate the once glorious race, forcing them to retreat back into their home world of Midrealm, with the gods sealing the portals behind them in a last act of mercy towards the race. The few unfortunate remnants scattered throughout the rest of the realms, hid themselves, making their homes deep in caves, mountains, and the most remote places, with those being caught brutally enslaved, violated and slain for sport. The median race in their great shame and suffering blaspheming the gods and forsaking their worship, destroying all that pertained to them from memory, saving the very few who secretly remained faithful, remembering their former love and kindness. The present Medi having long forgotten their shameful history, perceiving the gods if at all as nothing more than distant spirits unmoved by mortal plight.